never knew that you could. And when you feel that way, ain't it good, good dancing in the red and gold. Dancing in the red and gold.
What's up, Faithful? Welcome back to the 49er Faithful UK Live on our new regular Wednesday slot. As always, I'm your host, Paul Hope, and I'm delighted to be back with a new format for a new year for the live show. Joining me tonight is a man who I'm sure needs no introduction, our very own El Presidente. Thanks for joining me tonight, Lee.
No problem, mate. Thanks for having us on the show. I'm really looking forward to this. I've done a lot of research. Some of it was crazy. It led us down some rabbit holes I do not want to come back from. But it's going to be interesting listening to some of this.
So, for those of you who may not have seen Lee's fantastic YouTube short, which is a new feature for the live this year, he talks about the new format. So we're moving away from the preview and review element because we do that on the podcast. We're going to look at some new and exciting ways to make the live more interactive and more engaging. I will continue to be your host, and I will be joined by the podcast crew as well as special guests from time to time. So before we get into tonight's topic and all Lee's crazy conspiracy theories on why we moved to Levi Stadium, how are you doing tonight, Lee?
I'm doing fantastic, and I love the fact that I can say fantastic without getting a mark against me on the predictor scoreboard.
It's well documented. It doesn't count on a Wednesday, Lee.
It feels so good to be able to say that, but I need to be careful just in case I accidentally do it on the podcast the next time I'm on there. But yeah, can't wait to get into this. I think it's exciting times. We've got some really good topics coming up. Like I said, I've done a lot of research today, and it was all based off a conversation I had with Naji probably 2 years ago. In fact, you were part of that conversation. It was at the end of one of our podcasts where we generally finish recording, and then we talk for like anywhere from half an hour to an hour. And I believe this one was one of those times we actually talked for an hour. And we kind of went down this rabbit hole. We were talking about the Golden State Warriors, and Naji, just out of the blue, came out about, oh yeah, it's like that conspiracy theory why we moved from Candlestick. And we were like, what? What conspiracy theory? So that led us to think, you know what? Because it's now 10 years that we've been in Levi's, let's talk about the move from Candlestick to Levi's, and obviously the 10 years and what we thought of those 10 years. So yeah, really looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah, so before we get started, the Wednesday chat is on fire. So James, who was a big part of the live show in real life as well, if anyone's seen that photo of me stood next to James at Levi's, I look like a small child. But he says, evening all, Happy New Year. It's a shame that Nick has left the show, and he's looking forward to the new format, and he's sure that Nick will pop on the show in the future. Onwards and upwards. We're joined in the house by Melissa. Happy New Year to you. Were you going to say something there, Lee? Sorry.
I was. So luckily, a couple of people have just told me I'm a little bit quiet. How's that sounding now, guys? I know both Colin and Wayne have said that I was a little bit quiet there.
So it's quite ironic because Lee is the man in the know. Lee is the one who set me up with my own studio. Whenever we record, Lee's the one who always helps with my sound.
So my technology is a little bit too clever for its own good now. So my technology, I've got this mode called safe mode on my amp, so it kind of it listens to the audio 96,000 times per second, and if I'm clipping, it automatically turns us down, but it doesn't turn us back up again if I'm too quiet. So it's a little bit caught between a rock and a hard place, to be honest. So I've turned safe mode off, so you might hear us go really loud if I get excited.
And
that might happen once we get to conspiracy theories.
That's my job. So, Melissa, another beauty of doing the live show. I was getting ready tonight, Lee, about 7:15. Thought, got me notes, got me topic ready. And then Pete Carroll decided to announce the news that he's no longer going to be the head coach at our rivals, the Seattle Seahawks. So, I have seen that, Melissa. So, cheeky shout out there. There's a lot of people in the chat. We're joined by Thomas, 49ers Faithful Denmark, checking in. Barry is in the house. So, Lee, are you going to kick us off? Because you said about the conspiracy theory, and I chuckled because, as you said, we press end record, then we end up chatting. And it was one of those discussions where I think at the end we all said, that would have made one hell of a podcast. Why didn't we just leave record on? And as I said at the start of the show, everyone, we have the podcasts which do the review and preview element of the shows. So what we're trying to do is just move the live bit more to like tonight, looking at different topics. So, like you said, Ty,
Ty's
living
not wrong.
dangerously.
Ty's not wrong, honestly. Okay, so I'm going to bore you a little bit with a kind of a little history corner first. So the move from Candlestick to Levi's, obviously, it happened between 2013 and 2014. 2013 being the last season at Candlestick, 2014 our first season at Levi's. Now, one of the things you always hear from the majority of 49er fans, it's all about Jed York and why they hate Jed York. Oh, it's all Jed York's fault that we moved from San Francisco to Santa Clara. And I think it was maybe 18 months ago, I did a little bit of research into that just to find out whether or not it was his problem. Because it didn't stack up for me when he actually took over as a 49er CEO. So I did the work. So he's a little bit of a history corner. So John Edward York, born on the 9th of March 1981, he was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. He graduated from Notre Dame with a bachelor's degree in finance and history. He worked at the Guggenheim as partners as a financial analyst, but left after 1 year. When he left, that's when he became the director of strategic planning for the 49ers, later promoted to the vice president of strategic planning. Now in 2008, December, he became president of the 49ers. Now the next bit's important, and that date. So in December 2008, John and Denise York still retained ultimate decision making as CEO. In 2010, that is when Jed assumed the role of CEO alongside that of president. So remember that date, that's 2010. In 2012, he stepped aside as president, but he retained the role of CEO. So Levi Stadium, in 2006, the 49ers proposed a new stadium on Candlestick Point. Negotiations with the city fell through, so Denise and John York announced that the stadium build was moving to Santa Clara. Now, it wasn't until another 3 years, so 2009, on the 19th of May, Santa Clara officials signed off on the proposal to build a 68,000-seat stadium and lease it back to the 49ers, and that was a 40-year lease. So in 2009, that's when it was signed off. And at that time, the only people in the 49ers who could sign that off was John and Denise York. They ultimately signed off that move. In 2010, Santa Clara voted to approve a measure to create a tax-exempt Santa Clara Stadium Authority, which allowed them to lease it back to the 49ers at cost. In December 2011, the loan was secured and construction started in April 2012. So Jed York, he had no decision-making power when it was signed over. That lease was signed over to Santa Clara City. That was done by John and Denise York. When he came in, he actually oversaw the move. So it wasn't his decision. He didn't sign off on it. He had absolutely no choice because they'd signed off on a 40-year lease. That was it. It was a legal contract. So he had to oversee it. But a lot of people see Jed York as being the one that moved us out of San Francisco, and he wasn't. So I wanted to do that little bit of history so you know from now on when people turn on and say, well, Jed York moved us out of San Francisco. He didn't. His parents did. He just oversaw the actual move itself. So, conspiracy theories.
Well, before you go there, what you're saying to everyone is it's no coincidence that you met Jed York and now you've returned to England, Lee, and you're armed with all his knowledge. There's a conspiracy theory for you.
Well, to be honest, believe it or not, I think it was a Wayne Breezy show that got us to go and look at it. Because people kept on ringing in saying how bad an owner Jed York was. And I thought, well, other than the Trent Baalke situation, I didn't really believe that. But he's been tarred with that brush. Obviously, Trent Baalke and Jim Tomsula. He got rid of Harbaugh, and if I think about it, what Harbaugh did was inexcusable. And I can understand why he did that from a management point of perspective. But other than that, yeah, I thought he got a bit of a bad rap. So I thought I'd just do that. I'd just look into that and see how it went. But like I said, I mean, conspiracies. So Najee, one day on the pod, he just happened to mention this conspiracy. And we thought, I've never even heard of that. I've never heard of any conspiracy theories around Candlestick. And luckily enough, the one that he mentioned to me, the third one that I'll tell you about, does actually contain some of that information that he gave. Good friend. He didn't let us have his private jet, Ty, so I wouldn't call him that good a friend. Okay, so the first conspiracy theory, and like I said, this was really difficult to actually get through these and find these, so I've had to go down subreddits. Some of these places were a dark, dark place. So the very first one that I found was Scooby-Doo. So Scooby-Doo, there was a rumour that Warner Brothers, who own the rights to the Scooby-Doo franchise, paid John and Denise York to move the team away from Candlestick Park so that a Scooby-Doo land could be built. Scooby-Doo has a long history of fighting crime in San Francisco, including the infamous Minor 49er, which was in the Gold City ghost town. So that's the first one I found. And obviously, everything that I've read here, other than potentially the last one, which I do think has an element of truth about it, is just far-fetched baloney. So the second one, it was haunted by a former groundskeeper. The site became popular with paranormal enthusiasts. There were numerous reports of strange noises and sightings of a ghostly nature in the stadium, leading some to believe that the stadium is indeed haunted. And that is still thought today. It's not just the stadium, but it's the ground that the stadium was built on. Now that actually ties in a little bit with the third and the most interesting of the conspiracy theories. So this is the one where Najee mentioned something, and luckily enough, because he mentioned what he mentioned, I was able to do a Google search on it. So the site was actually previously a military base, and before it was demolished, the US military buried considerable amounts of radioactive material in the ground, and this happened way before any standards for actually burying or disposing of radioactive material came into being. So therefore the dumping of the material was not particularly done very well. I think it wasn't at a low enough level, and it wasn't encased in concrete, which I believe it should be nowadays. So rumour has it that once the NFL became aware of this, they conducted an extensive investigation into potential side effects of the San Francisco 49ers playing on that field 8 times a year. And from that, they deduced that the effects were the reason, and the one and only reason, why Jerry Rice was superhuman. And to me, that's the best of the conspiracy theories I found.
Yeah.
Love them.
I mean, there's a few people adding their own, so I'm just going to put this one up there, Lee. So Luke has put there that when DeBartolo bought the 49ers, he promised to keep the team in the city itself. And when the headquarters moved from Daly City, Santa Clara, that was a clue that the team was on its way out. And that was part of the research that I did for tonight, saying that the team headquarters had already been moved out of the city. So a few people weren't surprised.
Yeah.
It looks as if Melissa and Ty, both good friends of the show, have their own shows later. So we do appreciate, Ty, that Wednesday is a busy day for content creators. The aim of the live show on the 49er Faithful UK is we go live at 8 p.m. in the UK. There's not many shows like what you guys have, and that's what we wanted to bring to the UK audience. So I appreciate we're live at, I think, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, but we do hope that people will watch back. Like tonight, I won't be up for Ty's show because it's on at like 2 in the morning here and I've got work, but you'll rest assuredly tomorrow lunchtime I'll be watching Jess and Ty chop it up. So that's what we do in the 49ers community. The Scooby-Doo conspiracy theory isn't one that I'd heard, but Chris likes your theory there. He's put it turned Jerry Rice into the monsters from Space Jam.
Yeah, certainly did. Certainly did.
We're joined by Aaron, 49ers First Take. So Aaron's another one due to the time difference. I'm trying to stream with Aaron and we just can't match up with work, family. He's put there that he likes the JFK magic bullet theory, and we appreciate the love. Aaron, we dig you too. Aaron, you can catch him on his own channel and with our good friend Ted Talks Ball. Jay Peplow is agreeing with number 3. Makes sense to why it was torn down and not demolished.
I did read a reason why that was torn down rather than demolished. So by demolished he means blown up, because that was the original idea. They're just going to blow up Candlestick Park, raise it to the ground, but instead they knocked it down instead, and that was something to do rather with the surrounding areas, which I believe isn't a particularly good area. I remember going over to Candlestick back in 2013, and I was supposed to get a bus to Gilman and Paul. And everybody I'd spoke to had said, when you get off that bus, be very careful because you're going through a bad neighbourhood there. And we ended up getting a taxi because that's when I met David Ellicott. Once we got out the taxi, it wasn't too far along from Gilman and Paul, so it wasn't that far away along from the bus stop which I'd have been getting off. But obviously there was 4 of us, and it did look like quite a rough area. But I mean, nothing happened. Everybody was just tailgating or getting ready to tailgate. But apparently, out of respect for the local residents, they tore it down rather than blown it up.
Well, talking about dynamite and blowing stuff up, yes, Chris, I had this in my notes and I spoke to Lee earlier. So it's the 42nd anniversary of The Catch today, which was the greatest moment at Candlestick partly. And you alluded to you were fortunate enough to go there. So when me and Lee have been putting together this show tonight, Tracy was actually quite excitedly because Tracy bought me this in 2022. And I'll be honest, I've not had the heart to do it because everybody has warned me it's going to take hours and hours. And when we were getting ready for the show, everyone, I said, I've got a surprise, Lee. I'm going to show this off. Now, Lee, I've shown you mine. You show me yours.
Mine's just a little bit bigger.
So we told you we go a bit crazy on the live, but this has got more significance for me. Obviously, everybody watching knows it was my first trip this year. So when we were putting together this show and you were talking at the start about your conspiracy theories, I didn't realise that the original plans for Levi's were for it to be built in the city. Yeah. So the open ends would get the view of the city. Now, I think I had read that somewhere, but that made more sense to me because when we were out in San Francisco, we visited Oracle Park. We did the stadium tour. And I must admit, the site sat up in the seats, apart from that glass seat, which Neil Graham had a heart attack about. But we'll talk about that later. Yeah. And I thought that would make sense if the ends were open. And then I watched a video earlier today and it was talking about the fact that we're under the flight plan at San Jose, so we can't put shelter over because of the height restrictions and the fact that they just took the original plans and thought, oh, we can move them 40 miles up the road.
Do you know why they did that, though?
No,
it's because they didn't want to pay for another designer to design a stadium that would be perfect for Santa Clara. So they just took the plans that they already had and moved them down to Santa Clara, and that's why. And I think in hindsight, we'll get into it when we talk about season 2014. In hindsight, I think they wish they hadn't done that because of the issues that caused. Yeah.
So Ty has got his own conspiracy theory that the team was moved to Santa Clara just so you could get to games faster.
That is the last thing that I can do, get to games faster. It's a nightmare.
So Luke put there that he camped 3 nights in Candlestick Point just to buy layoff tickets in 81. So,
I think that's playoff tickets.
Playoff tickets, yeah. You shouldn't just read what's on the screen. Get me
no,
ginger.
You shouldn't.
And Neil, I've just been mentioning about your wonderful experience at Oracle Park and a certain seat that you would like to sit in if you ever go back. And I did hear this, that part of the reason the city and the organisation came to a bit of a standstill was the team were very high on it needed to be accessible. I mean, I've only been once and I can say that obviously we Ubered it from the city centre to the stadium, but coming home I found that quite easy. You know, we got on the train, we got off at one stop. It felt there was no rush to get back, but you'll chuckle because I remember when you put the itinerary together for the trip and I was like, what are we going to do on the Sunday night? And you were like, what do you mean? What are we going to do on the Sunday night? It's like, well, the game will finish about 5-6 o'clock. Surely we'll be doing something. But by the time we took our photos, walked on the stadium, came out, you were right, there was literally no time to do anything. And I think that, as a UK fan, NFL Sundays normally means plugging into the TV at 6 p.m. and watching all the games. It's a different experience being in America watching a game. Would you think that's safe to say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it's safe to say. And for a start, you keep on forgetting that there's the early games are 10 o'clock in the morning over in California. So, I mean, every time I've been over there, I can guarantee you every single time I have forgotten to set my fantasy team.
Yeah. I mean, I said to you, I was in 11 leagues this year and I wasn't bothered when we were out there. James has put that he went to Candlestick Park for 49ers games on 6 occasions and they won all 6 times. He's been to Levi's once and they've won. Interesting conspiracy theory, James. So what he's saying is he should go to every 49ers game. We'd never lose again. I like that, James.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Barry, McCartney needed the stadium for a concert and believed the spirit of John was trapped there. There's obviously some emojis in there.
Funnily enough, when I searched on Candlestick Park conspiracies, a lot of the stuff that came up was about the Beatles and about Pete Best. And apparently Pete Best waited for John, George, Paul and Ringo to go to their changing rooms in Candlestick Park, and he turned around and he said, I know what you've done, and I'm going to basically blow the whistle on this unless you stop touring. And that's why that was the last tour, the last concert. But again, it's conspiracy theories.
Well, you wanted to bring... Oh, bloody hell. If Joe Staley's watching, I thought I did a lot of fantasy leagues. 121. That is going to take some beating, Colin, but congratulations on winning 27. I'm guessing those 27 teams had CMC. Colin has joined us there. He's seen the Niners at Candlestick 37 times, but he's still a go to Levi's. So, I mean, and Neil Graham, he wouldn't sit in the seat at Oracle Park for free. So that is a bit of a light-hearted moment. But when we were putting together the show, and I was looking at the reasons of the team moving out, Levi Stadiums, some people either love it or hate it, especially if you're based out in San Francisco. What's your take? Because obviously we're talking conspiracy theories, but we're talking about the stadium in general. Because you've been to both.
Yeah, it was a grower. It was a grower. I didn't like it when I first went there, and I was there in 2014 in the first season. And when you went in, it just felt like concrete and metal. That's all it felt like. It didn't have any spirit. Didn't have any character. You didn't have the it's not called the Ring of Honor now, but it's up on the executive boxes where they've got all the retired players' shirts and stuff like that, numbers. It didn't have any of that. They didn't bring any of that from Candlestick. When you went into Candlestick, you knew you were going into a historic place. And I know, obviously, Levi's couldn't have been a historic place in 2014 because it was brand new, but it did feel brand new. It was just like walking into a brand new building. And it took a while to get that feeling that this is actually home now for us. Probably is a good 2-3 seasons. And in fact, I would say 3 seasons because I was back in 2015. It still felt the same as 2014. But 2017 when I went, I thought it feels a lot better now because they'd made a load of changes. But still, I know Candlestick had its detractors. I still like Candlestick. I just can't get away from the fact that I really like Candlestick, and I think that's purely because of the history.
It's a shame when I was reading that one of the plans was to obviously demolish Candlestick Park, then they were going to start building the stadium close by because it was going to be linked in with the Olympic bid, I think, for 2006.
Right. Yeah.
But the Niners wanted, as Lucas put there, it's about tailgating. The Niners wanted a more football-centred stadium where the city wanted more of a mixed arena. They wanted it to be more, for retail, shops. And the Niners were like, this is our stadium. We want it for football. Nadji talked about, correct me if I'm wrong with geography, Hunters Point, which was the naval shipyard, which we were talking about. And
so Hunters Point, Candlestick Point is pretty much right next to each other.
And that would tie in with the stadium design, where you've got the open ends, which you would see. Now, do you think you've talked there about the stadium had a brand new feel, which I think was the aim of the team. They wanted to start afresh. And you mentioned the years.
Yeah.
So obviously 2017 was Carl and John's first year. I think it's safe to say that the product on the field is a lot better in 2017 than it would have been when you went out in 2015, 2014.
Well, no, I mean, in 2014, we still had Patrick Wilson and Vara Bowman as our inside linebackers. Colin Kaepernick still hadn't quite been worked out, so he was still able to chuck the ball about. And the game I went to be honest, I think we were robbed. So Colin Kaepernick did a last-second quarterback sneak right in front of the end zone where I was, and to me, it clearly looked as though it was over the line, and they ruled it as short on the field, and apparently the replay didn't show them enough because he was buried in the pack, so they couldn't see it. But to me, it looked as though he was well over the line. So I think we were robbed that day.
I mean, the first year, yeah, do a disservice. History corner on the pod.
Yeah.
Knowledge. The first year
I do
we
have
went.
the stats for every year.
I was going to say the first year, so you'll get if I get this wrong.
Yeah.
I don't have the stats. We went 8-8 in the first year under
We
Harbaugh.
We went 8-8, but that's the regular season score. So we're just talking about Levi's here.
Yes, we are.
So Levi's, we went 4-4. So back in 2014, that was Harbaugh's last season. Before they didn't renew his contract, he didn't really get fired. They just decided not to renew his contract. It was also Patrick Willis's last season. So that was the last season he played for us. We actually lost our first home game in Levi's against the Bears, 28-20. Jay Cutler had our number. Believe it or not, I mean, Jay Cutler used to throw interceptions like they were going out of business. The first win was actually against the Eagles, 26-21. The game I went to was on November the 2nd, 2014. That was the Rams game. That's the one I took Andrea to. That was her first time in San Francisco. But I think one of the most memorable games was the 28th of December game against the Arizona Cardinals at Levi's. It was Frank Gore's last game as a 49er, and he rushed for 144 yards. That season also I had the first overtime game, 21st of December against the Chargers, and we lost that 38-35. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag, but we started the season with an even record. It wasn't a losing record, it wasn't a winning record, both over the season and at home. So it wasn't too bad. It's the next couple of years where it all went absolutely pear-shaped. So, I mean, 2014 transitioning into 2015 was where people probably look at Jed York and think, yeah, he's a bad owner. And that's because he let Trent Baalke ride all over him and kind of work his way in to get rid of Harbaugh, because he didn't like Harbaugh. And, I mean, Harbaugh made his feelings known to Jed York what he thought of him. So that's when we ended up with Tom Sula. And Jim Tom Sula, I mean, that season we went 5-11 over the season, but we still went 4-4 at home. Again, I was lucky enough to be out at Levi's that season. I went to the Cardinals game on the 29th of November, which is, I don't think it was the first time we wore black uniforms, but it was definitely the second time. I don't think it was the first one. But yeah, I mean, that was the season overall. We didn't like it. The football we were playing wasn't very good. And I think, if we fair, Jim Tom Sula should never have been given the role there. He should never have been given head coach. I used to love Jim Tom Sula, but he kind of wormed his way into that role, which really disappointed. Kind of took the gloss off the guy that he was, which was disappointing. But then it got worse, and we didn't think it could get worse. I mean, Jim Tom Sula, how can it get worse than your head coach walking up for a press conference and then farting? But it did. It got worse. We got Chip Kelly. Yeah. 2-14, 1-7 at home. We managed to win the opening game against the Rams, 28-0. Shut them out. And then we didn't win another home game all season. Luckily enough, at the end of that season, they got rid of Chip Kelly and they got rid of Trent Baalke, which was probably the best decision that Jed York has ever made. Well, sorry, the best decision comes up after getting rid of them. It was the second best decision. So that's when Shanahan and Lynch came in for the 2017 season. So the 22nd of September was a memorable game for me. Probably as a memorable game for most people, especially in the neutral. It's one of those games you look back on and you think, wow, that game was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, we lost it, but it was absolutely fantastic. And the Rams beat us 41-39. It was a really good game to watch. I think both teams were in the colour rush uniforms.
They were.
So the Rams were in bright yellow from head to toe. We were in the black uniforms again. It looked good on screen. It was a high-scoring game. It went down to the wire. I was convinced that game there went to overtime, but didn't. It ended in regulation. And for the score to be 41-39, that's just brilliant. That's one game I always look back on and remember.
Monday Night Football, that was the game where I'd set my alarm clock wrong and we were texting and you were like, what time are you getting up?
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm getting up at this time. And you were like, so you're not watching the first hour of the game? Because in the UK, when the prime time games are on, it's like 1 a.m. start. And on a Monday night, what I tend to do is go to bed early, get in from work, something to eat, go to bed about 6:30, 7, then get up like an hour before the game, and then just stay up the next day. And that I'll always remember because you text me. So I sat down, put the telly on, texted you, and Brian Hoyer threw a pick six in the first 7 seconds of the game. Yeah. But as a neutral, given this the season we'd had before, and when we're putting this show together, you talk about moments at Levi's. Everyone quick to remember the season this year and last year because they've been amazing, the 2019 run. But you were mentioning there that first year at Levi's. I remember that Kaepernick run against the Chargers. I remember Carlos Hyde scoring a touchdown in the black uniform against the Vikings where he did the spin move. And like you said, all those things were starting to add up and give Levi's its kind of feel. Now,
it's memories. It's the memories. Yeah. That's
so,
what does it.
Before we move on, I just started this comment. So Rob D has been a big supporter of the live, and he's just put there that he's asking for prayers for recovery for his girlfriend, who is a Niners fan.
I'm sorry to hear that, Rob.
In a coma since New Year's Eve, and he's just asked for everyone's thoughts. He's put thank you. So Rob, our prayers and thoughts with you and your family, buddy, and we do appreciate you taking this time to join on and listen to our crazy conspiracy theories about the 49ers moving to Levi Stadium. Yes, Ty, Chip Kelly was terrible. Leanne, never apologise. We always appreciate everybody taking the time out of the day to come and join me and Lee, listening to our thoughts. And Ty's echoed what we said there, Lee. Prayers up to Rob and his family.
Yeah. Right, so 2017, still on 2017. So obviously that was the first year Shanahan and Lynch came in and we lost our first 9 games. And I think there was a little bit of dread coming into us there. And I think it was that season where the not the conspiracy theories, but the paranoia started taking over people, saying that Levi's was cursed. Ever since we've moved to Levi's, we've been rubbish. Obviously, we know that's not right. We know that's not right at all. We're just unlucky. But we ended the season 6-10, even though we lost the first 9 games. And it comes to, again, a game I was at. And obviously, this game has to be my most memorable game of that season. So I was there back in 2017. It was a good it was a good trip over there. Now, there's some things that happened that kind of made it a good trip. Although when you hear the first thing I say, you think, why did that make it a good trip? So I went over with David Ellicott, went over with my nephew Ben and my older brother Steve. The day before, David came up to the northeast. His grandmother died. So he didn't really have time to grieve. It was on the late Saturday night, I think, and I picked him up on the Sunday afternoon. So David was still a little bit in shock. It was unexpected. She hadn't been ill, and she just suddenly passed away. So we ended up going out to San Francisco on the Monday morning, and she died on the Saturday evening. And David was a little bit quiet. I knew he was. It's something he didn't really want to talk about it, but we made the best of the holidays we could. And when I say we made the best of it, we certainly did. So this was the very first time that we should have met Nick Clark. So I'd been liaising with Nick Clark for about 12 months since then. And Nick had said, look, when you guys come over, come down to Levi's and I'll give you a private tour. So on the Tuesday morning, because Monday was travelling day, and like that's a 15-hour travel day for us, we got on the Caltrain, headed off down to Levi's, and I'm emailing Nick to say, we're on our way down. We should get down there for about 10:15. Now, we'd already been on the Caltrain for about 45 minutes, so I think we were maybe only 10-15 minutes outside of Mountain View. And Nick emailed back to say, I'm really sorry, but I've had a family emergency. I'm not going to be able to come into work today. However, I've let security know if you go up to security, somebody else will come down and give you the private tour. So we did that. We went in. We had this private tour by a lad called Jed. I can't quite remember what department he worked in.
Jed? Jed? You know what people are going to say there, Lee.
Sorry, Jared. Jared,
right.
Not Jed. Jared. Sorry, Jared. Can't quite remember what stadium he worked in, what department he worked in. But he took us around and he took us into places where you shouldn't really be taken into on a normal tour, which was good. So we got to see a few things that you don't normally get to see. And I think he was quite impressed that as we were going around the stadium, I was telling him more things about the stadium than what he knew. So upstairs on the top level of the executive box, they've got this garden, sustainable garden, and I was telling him all about that, and he was quite surprised because he didn't know that. And then other things about the field dimensions, he was quite surprised I knew about that. So it was a good tour, but it kind of wasn't the thing we were expecting anyway. So rather than go straight back, we decided that we were going to just pop into the Brick and Beam, which was the pub, the steak and bourbon house, which is attached to the stadium. Went in there for a couple of pints and some food. And while we sat there, David tapped us on the shoulder and said, "I think that's Keena Turner over in the corner." And I looked over and thought, "Oh, it is. Go over and talk to him." And David, straight away, the colour drained out of me. "I can't do that. I can't do that." So I said, "Look, I'll go over." So I just got up, went over to Keena Turner, introduced myself, said, "Look, 4 guys all over from the UK, and we were supposed to have this private tour with Nick. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it because he had a family emergency." Didn't tell him about the fact that Jared had took us around. He says, "All right, guys, I'll tell you what, if you can come back Friday, I'll take you around on a private tour myself, and I'll take you in the museum, and we'll have a wander around." And obviously we're not turning that down, even though we'd just done a tour. So we came back on the Friday, we did the tour with Keena Turner, which was unbelievable. Some of the stories he was telling us was great. The most memorable one, it wasn't really a story, it was just an answer to my question. And if you've ever been in the museum and had a walk around, there's a little section where they've got the cheerleaders' uniforms throughout the years.
I didn't see that. I just ran round because I had 40 minutes, so I didn't see that bit.
So I happened to mention something about the change in the cheerleader uniforms from how they used to be in the 80s to how they are now. And Keena just turned around, started smiling, says, "Yeah, but it does the same job, doesn't it?" And I just thought that was wonderful. A wonderful answer to an awkward question. It must have been an awkward question for him. But he took us around on that tour. Obviously, he took us into the SAP training facility, which nobody gets to go into. Introduced us to Trent Brown. We got our pictures taken with Trent Brown. While I was interviewing Keena, Gareth Selleck came out, and David managed to get his photo taken with Gareth Selleck. So he was happy. And I think one, I can't remember, one of the kickers might have walked past us, but I can't remember.
Would that have been David Akers at the time? Or would that be a different kicker?
I don't know. My memory's not that good for that season. It might have been David Akers.
Might be. What I'm alluding to is we rebranded the YouTube channel last year, but you had some original footage from that trip that you're talking about. So if people want to go and check out, I think you had a GoPro, didn't you, Lee?
I did, yeah.
You did a vlog. And didn't high school in America pick it up? So at one point that video was getting thousands of views, and you couldn't work out why it was getting so many views.
It still gets hundreds of views a day. It does get hundreds of views a day, and the comments on there that obviously high school kids that have been taken on a stadium tour of Levi Stadium, and yeah, I think at the moment it's something like 31,000 views, which is unbelievable.
A lot more than what we get.
I had a few negative comments. I don't like your music. I mean, it's personal taste, and I don't like your music. It's been put together on matchsticks. Well, I'm not a video editor. It was the very first time I'd done it, but I think it went down quite well. But yeah, that was interesting. So we'd been in the SAP training facility and seen that. He took us in to meet Paris Harrison and Guy McIntyre. He gave us, he actually gave us a hat. It's buried in me knits back there. I've only worn it once. The only time I wore this knit was at the Super Bowl against Kansas City Chiefs, and the reason I don't want to wear it, even though it's probably one of my most favourite knits, the whole design of it, is because it was given to us by Keena Turner. So I call it the Keena, and to be honest, it's going to go into my display cabinet because I'll never wear it because it's just got like sentimental value.
Ty's asking, did you invent Selleck time? I see what he did there.
No, who did that?
And while you're thinking of that,
I think that was Brian Davis, you know. I think that was Brian Davis.
Right. So Aaron has put there that his first time at Levi's was in 2018. He went to a Monday night game against the Giants. He loved the feel inside the stadium, even though he lost. And Justin is the guy you sent the flag to
I
in
know, and it got there
Alabama.
incredibly quickly. I can't believe how quickly that got there.
So-
In fact, that flag got quicker across to the United States than some of them got down south.
But he's just saying there that he's just jumping in. He'll catch it later.
Yeah.
He found the show. I think I did a show with Steph Sanchez, and I'm going to sound big-headed here, but he was quite blown away by some of my knowledge. And he reached out and said, "You guys have a channel?" And we're like, "Yeah, we've got our YouTube, got the podcast, which is out." So he joined the Discord chat that Nadji set up earlier, Lee, and he was like, "Look, I'm not going to be able to watch live, but I'll watch back." So I appreciate that he's jumped on. And Neil Graham, the font of knowledge, Phil Dawson was the kicker when you were there.
Phil Dawson, yeah, that's it. Oh, actually, so Neil and Ruth was out that year as well.
Yeah.
So we joined them for the tailgate before we went into Levi. Did we join them for the tailgate? No, they went tailgating with Jose, and we ended up getting the Red Zone Rally. But we did meet them after the game. So after that tour, we ended up going into the stadium store because I think it was Black Friday. It was Black Friday, and they had a huge sale on. So me, our Ben, and David, we dropped an absolute packet between the three of us. I think between the three of us, we must have spent about $2,500-$3,000. And there was this guy walking about, and he just happened to notice us, and he went over to David and started talking to him. And I think he said something like, "You guys look as though you've remortgaged your house to come into the store." And as soon as David started talking, he said, "Oh, where are you from?" So David said, "Oh yeah, we're from the UK. There's a group of 4 of us here." And he said, "Right, I'll tell you what, when you come to the game on Sunday, come and meet us at Intel Gate here, and I'll sort you out with some concessionaries, just to say like thank you for coming all the way over from the UK." So we were expecting something like a beer or a burger, like a token thing to go and get a free beer, free burger. So we rocks up, and he changed our tickets. So our tickets were like $100 seat tickets, and he changed them for $900 Levi's 501 club tickets. And that's where the players' families are. So we were up there watching the game, right in the halfway line, stood talking to Trent Brown's mum and dad, his parents. We just couldn't believe it. And that was the same year me and David got right down to the field side, and we stood right behind the Seattle Seahawks bench. And that's when the steward had to say, "Stop shouting Cheaty Petey," because Pete Carroll was walking past us, and I go, "Cheaty Petey, Cheaty Petey." And yeah, I got wrong for that, but we were down there and we did that. So that game there, it was memorable for many reasons. Obviously, we got to the Levi's 501 club, we got down the field side right behind the Seahawks bench. But the most memorable thing about that game was the game where Jimmy Garoppolo came in with, I think it was about 1 minute and 12 seconds left after CJ Beathard had been injured, and he took us down the field. And when I say took us down the field, I think we were already at the 35 or something like that, so he didn't have to take us far. He took us down and he threw a touchdown to Lewis Murphy, and from that game onwards, it was his team.
Now, don't be dissing Neil Watson's start of his storybook career to the Niners.
No, I mean,
you were there. I know. I'm joking.
I mean, you look at that. I mean, I was there for his first game. I was there for his last game. It just feels really strange that happened.
And who else's game were you there at Levi Stadium?
For Brock Purdy's first game. Not only that, I was in Vegas when Brock Purdy was drafted.
He was
right at the front of the stage.
So Rob has put there that he can't stay for the whole show, but he thanks everyone for his prayers. David put on earlier, Lee, that he'd never made it to Candlestick. He drove past once when he was there for work, and he hasn't set foot in Levi's yet, but he's saying that he's enjoying listening to your stories. He's watched the videos of the stadium tour. And David, I didn't think I was ever going to set foot inside Levi's. And Neil, he said he could have cried when you told him the store had 33% off on Black Friday.
Yeah.
They'd just flown in and didn't have time. And I suppose if I'm nitpicking, and I know we're going to do a gold mine show, the store being absolutely rammed when we were there. So I'd seen that video, and you've talked about going in the day before. Now, to be fair, I'm glad that I did the museum. I'm glad Maria let me and Kev into the museum. So out of the two, I'd have always chosen the museum because you can always buy stuff online. But I do think next time I go back, Lee, I'll set some time to go to the stadium the day before or the day after.
What I'd say about the stadium store, back in 2014 when it opened up, 2014, 2015, 2017, but only because you got the 30% discount, you could get some reasonably priced merchandise. But then when I've been back in 2019, 2022 and this year, I've walked into the stadium store and I've looked at stuff. I mean, I forced myself to buy this. So I bought this in 2022. I forced myself to buy it because I liked it so much. But it was a ridiculous price. It was like $70. And I just thought, it's not worth $70. But I ended up paying it anyway. Yeah, so that was 2017. My good friend Chris Smith.
But no, I know what you're saying.
Say aluminum for us.
We'll get into that. I mean, I know what you're saying about the team. So that's why I wasn't too hung up. Like, the one thing that I wanted when I was out in San Francisco was a new hat with the 49ers logo, which I got from Pier 39. And I regretted not getting the Shanna hoodie that you got last year.
Yeah.
You
got
regretted
one this year.
You regretted not getting the Salute to Service hoodie zip. And I saw the link and sent it to you, but I got this year's Shanna hoodie for Christmas. Like you said, the Fanatics get a bit of a bad press, but getting the Nike merchandise. Tracy got me this for Christmas purely because it has the Golden Gate Bridge on. Like you said, if I had to choose,
I do like that.
Yeah, Tracy, I was quite impressed when I opened that, and I'm trying to see behind. There's the photo frame that you picked up last year. So when we were putting together this show and we were talking about conspiracy theories at Levi's, I knew we'd go down the rabbit hole of our experiences and people jumping in the chat, and so you're going to have to explain this to people now, because
right. So the reason we got to the field side, so with the Levi's 501 Club passes, it was kind of an access all areas pass. So because me and David had been to Levi's a few times anyway, we wanted to wander about. So we tried to find all the different areas we could get in. Apparently there's a tunnel directly under the field that you can get to the opposite side where the 49ers bench is, but we couldn't find it. But we ended up going down into, I think you call it the BNY Club, which is behind the road team's bench. So you've got the big entrance exit into it, and you can get right behind the bench. And we went to go through there, and believe it or not, I'm going to call him a good friend because he's a good friend now. The guy that was on the door, the security guy, was a guy called Steve Madden. He was a member of the group. He was in the group, and it was his turn on the door, and he stopped us. But his boss, Chris Smith, he'd overheard the accents. So he'd come over and he said, where are you guys from? So we said, we're from England. He said, so what are you doing? Have you got the right tickets to be in here? So we showed him the tickets and everything. He said, all right, fine, that's fair enough. He said, do us a favour and say aluminum for us. So I said, aluminum. He said, no, do it the way you do it. So I said, aluminium. That's it. He just completely lost his shit. He loved it. He was absolutely creased laughing when I said aluminium. So he turned around to Steve and he says, Steve, let these guys go anywhere they want. So they let us through, and that's when we were pitch side, field side. Shoot myself the same pitch. Nah. So that was a lovely little story again, and it's just these characters that you meet. So back in, I think it was September. It was definitely September when I was over for the Giants game on my birthday. Steve happened to be walking past as I was with
Brian Culp.
No,
you would. The photos I saw you with David.
Was I with Brian Culp?
The photos I saw.
I was with somebody. Was
it David Bettridge?
Yeah, David Bettridge was there. I'm trying to think who else I was there with.
The photos I saw, there was Ty Ulster.
Yeah.
There was
he actually walked past us, recognised us, came straight over and jumped in for a photo with us. Oh, I'll tell you who was there. It was 49ers Mark. Mark right. Castanon. So, yeah, he came over, had a photo taken. Great lad.
Ty wins comment of the night. Conspiracy. Lee sneaks into Levi Stadium by
it's
the
not
secret
tunnel, Ty. It's the presidential tunnel, apparently.
Yeah. But you talking about there, like, I remember when we were coming back from Levi, so we just left Ty. I've got the photo of the Joe Montana
when I couldn't
statue.
speak.
Yeah. We got on, you'll correct me, it was definitely a train. It was the VTA light.
Yeah,
right.
so
we get on there.
Light.
And standing room only. And this, young lady, American, was like, you guys not local? Got chatting about England. And you'll laugh at this, Lee. So she was talking about Messi. She was a big soccer fan. She was talking about the impact Messi had. And she was talking about David Beckham. And I said, look, the problem the Americans had is they expected David Beckham to be like Messi. When in fact, Beckham was more like Carl Juszczyk of the 49ers as opposed to CMC, as opposed to Debo. And she was like, that's brilliant. I am using that to explain that to all my friends. So I was like, David Beckham, Carl Juszczyk, get that into a conversation. But we had a good bit of banter with her. She couldn't believe that there was 36 of us had flown on the Friday to go and watch that game. And like you said, I didn't have the good fortune of going to Candlestick, but I've seen the detractors of Levi Stadium. Now, I think you did it right. You took me to Stanford on the Saturday, and I was quite impressed by Stanford Stadium. I went for a walk on the Tuesday to see Kezar Stadium. Now, I know it's just the archway there, so I kind of ticked those off. But I was very impressed with Levi Stadium in the flesh, seeing it for the first time, walking up to it. And then when we didn't go in Gate A, we were at the other side.
Yeah, so we went into Dignity Health Gate C. That's where you go in for the gold mine. So where you stand, where you sit for the gold mine, that's on Intel Gate A. So that's at the top of Intel Gate A. But to go in, you have to go in at the opposite side, which is Dignity Health Gate C. And that's where you meet. And
I'd underestimated that impact of going up the stairs and then getting to the top of there and then walking around and seeing that for me was, I was really impressed. And then at the end of the game, you look back on your memories. I'm gutted that I missed out on that big photo with Neil's big flag, 49ers mark. But at that point, Nadji took me for a walk all the way around. Yeah. And one of my favourite photos is I can see you guys in the distance. And me and Nadji took a photo. And it was quite, just taking it all in. I know before the game started, Connor Ryan and Jess had been at the top of the stadium near us. So, again, after we'd done our interview with Nick Clark, I managed to take that opportunity to do what Connor did and go right to the top and get some photos.
See, but Connor needs to be really careful going to the top of Levi Stadium with his skin type. With him being ginger, if he does it during the day, he'll just spontaneously combust.
Now, I wasn't going to mention this, Neil, but yeah, she got that the American lady we were talking to, she suddenly was like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong direction, and leapt off the train. Now, it was about the same time Brett entered the conversation, so I'm just putting two and two together there and saying when Brett started talking in his wonderful Scottish accent, the young lady decided to, I'm joking, Brett, it's a joke. While I've been interrupted there, James, I was on my best behaviour. To be honest, the store was that ram-packed. Yeah. My memory of the store was Neil Graham was getting you a thank you jersey, and I was in on the secret, and I bumped into you, and I was like, bloody hell, mate, it's rammed in here, I'm going. And you had a jersey in your hand, and I was like, what jersey have you got there, Lee? And you were a little bit like, why? I was like, oh, I'm just interested. And then I bumped into Neil, and I was like, he's got that jersey.
Honestly, Paul, everything just goes whoosh, straight over my head. Neil could have been stood there talking to us saying, so what size jersey are you? Which he did. He said, what size jersey are you getting? Because I had a jersey. But he could have been saying, so what size do you take? Which jersey do you want next? Which one do you fancy out of all these ones? And it wouldn't have occurred to us at all what was happening.
No, to be fair, he did do that quite well, and it's memories like that. I mean, Neil's obviously watching now. We are going to do a dedicated show about the gold mine, so we didn't want to make tonight about the gold mine. Tonight was about Levi's. Now, I do want to ask you a question because we've hardly got into the conspiracy theories. I think I know your answer, but if you could, and you could turn back time, would you put the stadium back in the city?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
It is?
No, it would definitely be San Francisco. Yeah, every day of the year it would be San Francisco. I'd even look at the feasibility of sticking it in Golden Gate Park.
Oh, wow. I mean, like I said, I did manage Kezar Stadium on the Tuesday. You'd got Seattle at like stupid o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I was meeting Ted for lunch, so me and Nadji went for a quick walk to the park and obviously cut through to get to Kezar Stadium. And I must admit, I did think, imagine if the Niners played at a stadium this close to the city.
Yeah.
Because it would have been. And obviously we went to the Golden State Warriors game on a Monday night, and the fact that you were in the heart of the city and Oracle Park. I'm not a massive baseball fan, but after doing that stadium tour, Lee, I would be keen to watch a game there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Golden Gate Park would be the perfect place to do it because, obviously, if you've only just been to Kezar, you don't realise how big Golden State Park is, Golden Gate Park is. Me and David definitely found out last year. Not last year, it was 2022. So after watching the Thanksgiving Day game, the Turkey Bowl game, we'd gone into Kezar. We'd had a quick pint because they're closing up really early, which is unusual. And then we decided, all right, we'll walk through Golden Gate Park. We'll walk up to Land's End. Land's End? Yeah, I think it's Land's End. And then round to Baker Beach that way. Not realising actually how far that was. Because I had in my mind it would be about 4 miles. It was actually 4 miles just to walk through Golden Gate Park. And then you had to cut up and go up towards the Golden Gate Bridge. So we ended up getting, I think, 2/3 of the way through. And I think it was 26th Avenue that we ended up cutting up. Which basically took you straight up to where Baker Beach was. So we ended up doing that, and we missed out a whole third of Golden Gate Park, but that was a hell of a walk that day. Well, it's a massive place.
It is, yeah. Well, I fell foul of, if you were on our trip, and if Nadji told you it was 10 minutes away, you added at least 50 minutes, if not more. So I fell in the trap of, Nadji, I'm meeting Ted for lunch today, Ted Talks Ball. Nadji's like, we've got a couple of hours to kill. So I get on this bus with Nadji Lee, and we're going further and further out. And then we get off, and there was a sign for the Golden Gate Park. So, you know me with my phone. Took a photo of it, and then we're walking. I opened my photo up. I was like, Nadji, there's no way on this planet we're getting around this whole park. He's like, we'll do our best. I was like, seriously, there's no way. So that's when we cut it to Kezar Stadium. Now, I wasn't there for long, but again, if you are going to go to the city, I definitely would take your advice and make time to do some of the sightseeing. It did kind of feel a bit surreal being on Kezar ground, because I know it's linked to the Niners.
And obviously, you know about Dirty Harry being filmed there as well, yeah?
I did when I was reading.
So one of the scenes at the end where he chases them through the stadium, that's where that is. That's Kezar Stadium. Yeah, I mean, if you'd been to Kezar, and you had been to Kezar, you were literally a 5-minute walk away from the Haight-Ashbury district, the old hippie district, Summer of Love, 69, that sort of thing. Which is interesting walking through there, and then again another 5-10 minute walk max. You're at the Painted Ladies in Alamo Square. Everywhere is walkable within San Francisco, if you don't mind walking for like 20-25 minutes. So yeah, there's so many things that you could have seen there. The only place I wouldn't recommend going, definitely not on your own, is Twin Peaks. So obviously me and David went to Twin Peaks back in 2022. That was when we were driving down to Santa Cruz, and it's the only place the pair of us have not felt safe. I mean, I'm 6 foot, David's 6'4", 6'5". Two strapping blokes got out of a car. Yeah, when I say that, I'm talking about me and David. Blow me on trumpet. So me and David got out of the car, and we were like, this just does not feel safe here. So it was kind of a tick in the box for us. We just got out, took our photos, straight back in the car, and drove off. That's the only place in San Francisco I've never felt safe. That, and probably anywhere past 6th Street. So once you get past 6th Street, it becomes decidedly dodgy. You're going towards Civic Centre. If you go one back from 6th Street, or not one back from 6th Street, but one back from Market Street, you've got Turk and Eddy. Turk and Eddy's not a particularly desirable place. It's not somewhere that you want to go. In fact, back in 2013, when I met David, he was staying at the Hotel Bijou, and that's literally around the corner from Turk and Eddy. And the concierge had said to David, when you leave the hotel, whatever you do, don't turn right. He says, got you, I'll go right. Got you, I'll go left. He says, no, don't turn left either. He says, well, hang on here. If I'm not turning right and I'm not turning left, where am I going? He says, go straight over the road, round that corner there, head towards Union Square, and then you're okay. And try and make the direct route back. But don't go left, don't go right, because it's a really bad area. And to be honest, I mean, you look down the street and you can see it's a bad area.
I'd heard some of the stories before we went, and I know there was a lot of people saying that we didn't see a true reflection because the convention had been on when we landed and the city had been cleaned up. But obviously, safety in numbers, we were at Pier 39. Yeah. And like I said, when I talk about my experience, we did Stanford, we did the NBA game, we did the Niners game, and obviously you've been before. So I think I would have been lost without you. But we did see the city. We saw a fair bit of the city. We travelled on public transport. we went up to the Golden Gate Bridge. We even brought the wonderful rain when we landed on the Friday. It was chucking it down. The Saturday morning, it was chucking it down. But I reshared our video from Victory Monday at the Golden Gate Bridge. Me and you, our voices were very hoarse, and it's little memories like that keep popping up. So when we were putting this show together, I've got those memories from 2023. But how many times have you been to Levi's now?
Let me have a quick look. So I'll do it in game. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eight games at Levi's I've done.
So we were talking, when we were doing our research, there was a talk of the new concrete building. There was no soul, there was no kind of memories. And you mentioned Nick Clark. Now, I know we've been talking for an hour, so don't worry, everyone. We won't be going much longer. But do you think the job what Nick's done and the gold mine and the fan engagement area has helped give that?
It has. So, I mean, the gold mine only came about back in 2019, and then they had to pause it for a year due to COVID. And it was always supposed to be a three-year trial, which is why I wasn't entirely sure whether or not they're going to do it after this season. After speaking to Nick while I was over there, it seems as though they are impressed with how it's gone. They think it is working. They think the atmosphere is better since the gold mine's been in, and in that case, they're going to continue doing it. Plus, it's a great way to kind of reward fans in a way, because you get in free of charge. Obviously, if the team weren't doing that well, tickets plummet. So a good example of that was back in 2015. That was the Cardinals game that me and David went to. I think we paid something like $95 for a seat ticket. That was up in section 310, and on game day the same tickets were down to about $12 because we weren't playing very well that season. So it's give and take. It all depends on how you're doing. Obviously, this season we've been brilliant. Last season we were brilliant. So ticket prices don't drop that much. I would imagine on game day you can still get them for maybe $70, $80 because people who have the tickets are trying to sell them as soon as possible to get as much money as possible. But yeah, I mean, the tickets where we were, if we had to buy tickets where the gold mine is, just in front of us, those tickets were going from anywhere between $250 and $500 in those seats, just in that corner. So it's expensive.
Amazing. The view was amazing. The fact that there was 40 of us. So, see, when we put together the idea, everyone, of doing a live show, it's very different to the pod, isn't it, Lee? Because you go live, you don't put I wouldn't say as much prep. We didn't want it to be scripted.
So I was going to say, I've put more preparation into this than what I've done all season on the podcast.
But what I mean,
don't tell Gareth.
Yeah, Gareth should have been watching. But what I mean is, when the live element and the comments, what I was going to finish off with is, you did your short yesterday, so that's going to be a feature moving forward, isn't it, Lee? So I just wanted you to explain that a bit more to the people watching.
Yeah, so before I explain the short, what I'll say is, what I'd like of the live show, if obviously you need to agree this between the presenters before you go on, it doesn't need to be 1 hour. It can be shorter than 1 hour, it can be longer than 1 hour. If we've still got stuff to talk about, we'll continue talking. And finish it off. I mean, we're only up to 2017, we've still got another 6 seasons to go. So yeah, the short, the reason I brought in the short is I thought it was a good way just to communicate what we're doing. It obviously gets our views up. It only takes a minute. I thought it would be dead easy to record a short and stick it on there. The one I stuck on yesterday, I had to record 12 times. Because believe me, 60 seconds goes over a lot quicker than what you think it goes over. The first attempt I did, I hadn't even started talking about what we were going to do in the show. And I was up to 55 seconds. I thought, what? Right, cancel, delete, start again. 12 times it took us. So it's not easy, it is time consuming. But I think it's a really good way of one, getting views up, two, getting a more clear message away. Plus, we can use it on different platforms. So it went up on YouTube as a short, it went up on Instagram as a reel, it went on TikTok. And the response I've had from TikTok was unbelievable. In the 12 months that TikTok's been up, I think we had about 800 views on the videos that are up there. Within 20 minutes of that short going on to TikTok, we had 1,800 views just on that one shot. Yeah. So it kind of worked. It must have hit an area where people thought, right, well, that looks interesting. I like the description of it. Let's watch it, because it's only a minute long.
So I know we're not finishing off yet, and again, just trying to get people, because normally we do an hour, and like you said, we knew tonight's topic was kind of, I wouldn't say go down a rabbit hole, but what we wanted to do is
We've gone down plenty of rabbit holes.
We have, buddy. But it's like when me and Nadji stood in for you and Gareth on the pod, and we went down the rabbit hole. So we're up to now 2017. So come on, you've put a lot of prep in. Let's get
2017. So on to 2018 then. So 2018, obviously it was a bad year again. 4-12, 4-4 at home. For me, the standout game was probably November the 2nd. It was the last Battle of the Bay. Nick Mullins lit it up on Thursday Night Football, beating the Raiders 34-3. George Kittle with that one-handed catch, smack bang in the middle of three defenders. And so we all thought, Nick Mullins, second coming of Joe Montana. How wrong were we?
That was Tracy's first game. She fell asleep halfway through, but that was Tracy's first game.
Yeah. So that was quite an uninspiring season, and I think people starting getting a little bit impatient, because it was obviously Shanahan's second season. But then on to 2019, the Super Bowl year, great start to the season, 8-0. We ended up finishing 13-3. We were 6-2 at home. Again, 2019 was a year I went over. To me, I think one of the standout games was the 17th of November game against the Cardinals. Jimmy G, 424 yards, Debo 134 yards through the air. The game I was at was probably another standout game. It's definitely one I like, because this one we actually beat the Green Bay Packers 37-8, and it was the worst game statistically that Aaron Rodgers had ever played. And I think it still is the worst game he's ever played, and I don't think he's forgiven us about that. And then on to the playoffs. So we had a couple of games at home. We beat the Vikings at home, and again, I think the standout season of the playoffs, and probably that season in total, was the Packers at home again. Raheem Mostert, 220 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. Jimmy G, 6 of 8, 77 yards. And that's when the real doubts came in about Jimmy. Why wasn't he allowed to throw the ball? Because he had thrown the ball against the Packers back in November, but for some reason he hadn't. Not even going to talk about what happened in the Super Bowl. On to the 2020 season, COVID, injury-plagued season. We were 6-10, 1-7 at home. The most memorable game that year was the bye week. I think that everybody thought, thank God for the bye week. That was the one where we lost both Nick Bosa and I think Solomon Thomas, one player after the other. And I think later on in that game, Jimmy ended up injuring his ankle. He had a high ankle sprain. So we lost 3 pieces. And I think that was game 2 against the Jets.
It was in New York, because if I remember rightly, that was the year we were going to do our first 49 Faithful UK stateside trip, because we thought New York might be a good sell.
That's right, because we wouldn't do back-to-back games. Yes.
We were going to do back-to-back games, and then COVID hit, and then obviously, like you said, we lost 3 players. So 2020 is not a good year for any of us.
So 2021, so that was a little bit better. We ended up 10-7, 4-4 at home. For me personally, I thought the most memorable game was the Texans game, purely because that's the first time we saw Trey Lance look like he could be the quarterback we thought he was going to be. Not necessarily the first half, because the first half he was pretty poor, but that's because Shanahan kept on trying to run him up the gut all the time. In the second half, he was allowed to throw the ball, and we were all thinking, wow, he can't fling that ball down the field. He's got some arm strength in him, and it kind of looked good. So to me, that Texans game in 21, that was the game of the season for me, the most memorable game. Not necessarily the best game, but the one that stood out thinking, yeah.
You mean the game Neil Watson flew 5,500 miles to see his hero Jimmy in action, and then had to watch Trey Lance play? Sorry, Neil, I had to get that.
I'm laughing, and I'm not going to say sorry, Neil.
But no, I think Wayne, who's just been promoted to the admin team, the official photographer and sponsor of the live.
When you say promoted, what I would say is
reinstated.
Wayne has been reinserted as an admin. So Wayne was an admin back in 2015. Obviously, when the group split into 2, both me and Wayne took on all the admin duties for that, and Wayne was an admin all the way up to I think 2018, 2019. and I hope he doesn't mind us saying this, but he had a few health issues, and he said, look, do you mind if I step back from being an admin? And I've said, of course not. Look after yourself, get yourself sorted. So he stepped back. And then since then, I think everything's taken off. He's getting over those health issues. Obviously, he met a lovely, charming woman. He's married her. He's very happy now, and he does a lot for us. And he does a lot more than what people realise. So it was Wayne that actually created our website. He actually pays for the website. So thank you very much for doing that, Wayne. And he does a lot. Obviously, he does thumbnails for the show. And he's obviously our official photographer as well. And he does such a good job. And he does it all free of charge. So thank you very much for taking on the duties again as one of the admin.
So he's saying there that he likes the new format. He's going to watch the end later. And when I watched that video back when me and you did our Victory Monday dance, he was trying to get a selfie, and I ruined it. I was like, "It's the best photo bomb ever." But no, I think it's been a good start to the live, and I have enjoyed delving back into our history. And I think Levi Stadium's starting to feel more at home. So with 2021, so you've got last year and this year to finish off, Lee. So they're two fantastic years to talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you mean 2022 and 2023. So 2022, 13-4. Regular season, 8-1 at home. For me, it has to be the Miami Dolphins game when Purdy came in. Things started to look up for us. I was at the game before that as well. I was at the Saints and Dolphins game. Saints, I managed to get on the field before halftime to do the quiz, so obviously that was pretty special. The game was pretty dire, to be honest. It was an awful game to watch. But to get onto Levi's field while they're still playing and literally be on the edge of the end zone as the 49ers were trying to get into the end zone and failed miserably. That was pretty special, that, because it just felt so close. Unfortunately, it was one or two games after somebody had run onto the field when we played the Rams. Yeah, it was the Rams. And because of that, there was added security, and everybody was just giving us the stink eye because I was stood so close to the end zone. But obviously, that makes it memorable for me. Miami Dolphins. When Jimmy G went down, me, David Ellicott, Nick Ludlam, David Betteridge, we all looked at each other. Not David Betteridge, he wasn't there. It was me, Nick, and David Ellicott. We looked at each other and thought, that's it. That's our season gone. We can't believe it. Obviously, Trey Lance was already injured. He'd been injured against Seattle Seahawks. We'd lost Jimmy, who was arguably playing the best football he played since 2017. And then we were taking this kid who'd been picked with the last overall pick. And we're thinking, I don't know about this. Although, having said that, I did predict pre-season that Brock Purdy would throw the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl because I liked what I saw from him in pre-season. So he came in, he was a little bit shaky, as you all know. A couple of his first few passes just sailed over people. But then a switch flicked and it was just, wow, what are we watching here? This is just too good to be true. And the rest is history on Purdy's career. But obviously, that was one of the standout games of the regular season. Into the playoffs, we went 2-0 in the playoffs. Both away games. Or were they both home games? They were both home games. Yeah, that's right. Dallas with Zeke at centre. So, I mean, that's a memorable game. You'll not see that very often. And then on to 2023. So this year, 12-5 at home. Sorry, 12-5 in the season, 5-3 at home. I managed to get out 3 games this season. One of them was away, but 2 of them were at home. So the Giants on my 50th birthday. That was memorable because it was my 50th birthday. I could think of no better place to be than Levi Stadium watching 49ers play. And it was just sheer luck that happened to play on my birthday. I didn't really have anything else planned. I don't particularly like parties. I don't like parties when they're to do with me, being thrown for me. I don't like being the centre of attention. So I thought, I don't want to party. I just want to go and do what I want to do. And I had the full support of my wife, who works in the school, and she can't go anywhere outside of the summer holidays, school holidays. So I just went. Memorable games from this season, I think it's got to be the Cowboys 42-10 demolition. None of us expected that. we were just blown away by how much we dominated them. So that's the end of the 10 seasons. Now, you're not going to believe this. I was very surprised, and I might test people. So, I mean, I've given all the home records for the 10 seasons we've been in. I wonder if anybody's actually been making a note of that. Who knows what the final total is? I'll give you a minute, 1 minute to put your answers, your best guesses.
Yeah,
So I'll give you a guess, and I'll tell you that there's 81 games in total being played at Levi Stadium in the regular season.
I know, because I'm not going to answer because I did my homework. But whilst we're letting the chat put the comments in there, Luke.
Well, now I'm nervous because I always have to tally up if you know what the home record is.
I think I know. My notebook's downstairs, but Luke has put that we did a great job today, so appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you, Luke.
Totally agree, Neil. Wayne's a legend. So what we will be doing whilst we're giving the chat, so drop them in your comments if you're still watching. Please give us your overall record of the 10 years at Levi's. But tonight, Lee set the topic because it was the first of the new format. But what we're going to do moving forward, isn't it, Lee? We're going to announce the topic a couple of days before, or we're going to do we're going to ask people for thoughts. It's kind of a work in progress at the moment, isn't it?
We're going to ask people for thoughts on what you want the topic to be within the group. We'll discuss that between ourselves, and then we'll pick one of those topics, and then we'll put. Sorry, I'm just seeing what Colin's saying there, and then we'll do a short to say this is what it's going to be.
So, like you said, the live kind of grew its own community, and obviously you press live, the comments, we always love the comments, but what we're trying to do is, we know the podcast is well received, we've had record numbers this year, so what we were careful of is we didn't want to just keep repeating what's said on the pod, and we do appreciate everybody that downloads and listens to the pod, and I'm at that point of the show, we're an hour and 16 minutes in, and I haven't done it. Please hit the like button, please turn the notifications on, and hit subscribe. Does mean a lot. I think we're at 711 subscribers when I checked last time on YouTube, which is amazing. We are trying to hit 1,000. If we could do that by the end of the season, it would be amazing, but I think that might be a target for next year. So Jay has jumped in. He's put 40 to 37. So I saw 40 wins to 38 losses. Is that right? Is that wrong?
So I've got a different figure. I've got 40 wins to 41 losses.
You might be right. My notebook's downstairs. But Colin's got 40 wins. And
I'm going to double check that. I mean, so we've all gone for 40 wins, but I've got 41 losses. Now I'm trying to figure out how they've tried to work that out, because if you recall, we've had an additional game for the last 2-3 seasons now. So there's
and that was just regular season.
So 17 games. That's just regular season. So in the playoffs, which is a very good sign, we are 4-0. 4-0 in the playoffs.
I like it. And also, people, if you would like to guest appear on the show and bring a topic of your own, we are looking into doing that. What we will say, if you are going to come on the show, we'd prefer it not to be on a phone. So we'd prefer it if you've got a setup similar to what we have, just kind of for recording purposes. Yeah. But equally, we are keen to get some of the faithful on and obviously bring the topic to what you want to talk about. But I think we've done well there, Lee. I'm quite impressed with our knowledge of Levi Stadium and your Scooby-Doo conspiracy theory. So for the people who haven't watched...
Is that your favourite, is it?
I'll be dropping a Scooby-Doo gift later to say if you missed the show, just to get the talking point. I hadn't heard that before, to be honest, mate.
I hadn't heard of any of them before. Well, I'd heard a little bit about the third one, the military base and the radioactive material. But when I read it, and rumour has it that the NFL became aware of this, conducted extensive investigation, and found that the radioactive waste was the sole reason that Jerry Rice was so superhuman, I just thought it was hilarious. And like I said, I had to go down multiple subreddits to find these conspiracy theories, because when you type it in, it's very hard to find anything.
Yeah, I must admit I did struggle with that. So we will be back later in the week with the next episode of the 49er Faithful UK pod, which will be very strangely, because it's normally a preview game. And we don't have a game this weekend, but Jay is still waiting for the foundations.
Me too, mate. Me too.
Jay, keep your eyes out with you. Chain of thought. So, any final thoughts, Lee, before we get on out of here?
So Levi's, like I said, it was a grower. It has grown on us. I do feel as though it's home now. The thing I like about Levi's is when you're going up either one of the stairways, if you're on Gate C or Gate A, when you get to the top of that stairs and you can see down on the field and then actually see how high that stand is opposite the executive boxes. I think it's an impressive stadium to look at it that way. I don't particularly think it's a good stadium for football. It was definitely not made to win football games. It was made to generate money. That's obvious. But it has improved over the years. And it is now home, and it's going to be home for the next 30 years.
So we appreciate your support, Ty. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Now, you say that before we go, that going up the stairways, I went to Paris in 2020, and when you came out of the elevator near the Arc de Triomphe, I thought that was pretty impressive. But seeing that view when we came up the gate, that for me was better. And then the walk around. But yes, we will be back later in the week with the podcast. We will be back next Wednesday. Who knows? It might be me and Lee. It might be me, Lee and Nadji. It might be me, Lee, Nadji and Gareth. Or it could be a special guest. But the first one is in the books, Lee. I'm looking forward to the next one. So all that is left for me to say is thank you for watching, everyone. Stay safe and go Niners.
Bang, bang, Niner gang.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, deep Clark, Garrison Hurst.